This is RL Podcast, and I'm with my boy, Chris Wong. How you doing today, bro?
I'm great, bro. Thank you for having me.
Oh, man, I'm glad to get this going, man. I know we talked about it for like, I don't know, like a month or two ago, but,
Mm,
it's been kind of crazy with like the scheduling because like I'm still getting like adjusted to this new lifestyle. So it's like this job that I'm at, it's like
yeah, it
fucking
seems exciting out there.
it, it is, but like at the same time, people always ask me like, "Oh, how is it?" Like, Japan must be great, but it's like when I came here, I went straight to school, and then after I go to school, it's
Mm,
like I'm broke half the time because like I'm a student because I can't work, right? Because like I'm
yep,
going Monday to
yeah.
Friday, and then like after I'm done with school, I was working on Saturday, so it's just like I didn't get to really experience the whole like Japan life. Like I'm just now like having a full-time job and like doing all that.
I
So
see. You're
yeah,
settling in, like your roots are kind
yeah.
of, yeah.
So like going back to what we were talking about earlier, like going
Mm,
out is crazy because like if
yeah,
the train stops at 12, right? But all parties are
I
like
see.
4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, right?
Hmm.
So what happens is once you go out, you have to stay out the whole night, and then it's like
Oh,
yeah,
you
because I
gotta
can't.
commit to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like I live, so like basically I live like in the suburbs of like of like Tokyo's like yeah like the suburbs of like Japan. So like it's like 40-50 minute ride out, whatever. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah.
So, but
So
anyway,
if you're out, you gotta really have like kind of a game plan as
yeah,
to
yeah.
what's about to unfold for the evening.
And you know what's crazy? Like what happens? What happened
Uh-huh.
from that? There's like this whole like business. There's like a whole like a little market for like internet cafes and karaoke because a lot of these people that go out, they don't
Hmm.
get a hotel because hotels are expensive. They just go to these
Yeah.
places and get fucking um yeah. They
Yeah.
just rent out the cafes and knock out.
So I actually watched a really interesting like YouTube segment
Yeah.
about that recently about how even like people on the lower economic rungs of Japanese society will like nearly like live in some of these
Yeah,
places.
yeah, yeah. It's weird because like it's so affordable that
Yeah,
if you have a job, you could just do that and if you don't give a fuck, oh
interesting.
yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
this
like
yeah.
super just like single life like
Yeah, yeah,
type shit like
real, like that's like the next level dude shit. Like you know how like dudes
yeah,
just be like living in an apartment with like nothing in the house, like just a fucking
like a mattress.
yeah. And but then it's just like this is just like the next level, just being in an internet cafe with like nothing.
That's
Yeah.
that's crazy.
But I wanted to ask a little bit like cuz like I know originally from Chicago, right? If
Yeah,
is that
so
correct?
I grew up here. Yeah.
Yeah, so like what part of like cuz like I'm always fascinated Chicago in a lot of ways,
Mhm.
especially cuz like,
Yeah.
especially with the music situation, but like
Yeah.
how did you feel like cuz I know you lived in New York City for a little bit. Like how do you feel
Yeah.
comparative to like Chicago life to like New York life?
Dude, this is like one of my favorite things to touch on because like Chicago Chicago is a really interesting place in that a lot of its geography is informed by one event in its history, which is like the Great Chicago Fire.
Okay.
At a time in where most of the city's buildings were made of wood. The city basically burned down once, and they had this great plan to like build it prior to that
Right.
to make it built out like a European city. And after it burned down, I think it coincided with the time these cars were built or whatever. These cars were starting to become manufactured and a part of American
Right,
society.
right.
So
Industry, yeah. Industrial
yeah, and
period.
so they built it out more to accommodate car travel, but still retain some aspects of like a traditional city. And so compared to New York, um, New York is so just like condensed and like you can't really go out your front door without like literally running into somebody, right?
Right.
But here everything is way more spaced out. The streets are way wider.
Mm.
And basically the farther you get, I mean, it's kind of like the boroughs in a sense. There are like neighborhoods in Chicago's that I'll like drive around nowadays that
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh, this feels like I'm out in like way far out in Queens or something like
Right.
that, or like, oh, this feels like Williamsburg or
Mm.
something. But um, there are a lot of similarities there. But Chicago, because of that layout I was going to get back to, was is very segregated, literally block to block. And so where I grew up was it's a very traditional, it's like Irish Italian working class neighborhood
Right.
that had ties to some of the old politicians that were again rumored to be tied to like the mafia and stuff way back in the 20s.
Right. Right.
So I was first generation Asian kids, I guess second generation Asian kids to live in that neighborhood. And
Okay.
so I experienced probably the last wave of like city kids. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you probably grew up at a time too where like you were outside like on your bike and like hung out with kids at the park and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Right? I don't see that a lot anymore, but like that was like I was part of that last
Last bit
kind of
of
dying age
yeah. Right.
before everyone got on the internet and just is like on the internet now, I guess.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Now like everybody's just making content. I mean, like what we're doing right
yeah,
now.
yeah. Which is cool, right? Like we have to like exist within whatever, however, like the context
Yeah.
changes. But yeah, so I was in this weird time where it was like still it felt like you were living this inner city life and
Mm.
like kids were outside all the time and like we were getting into fights outside and like you would go to your friend's house and like ring the doorbell to see if they were home. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Actually
stuff
call
like that.
people and stuff and
Yeah, you were calling people and be like, hey, is so and so home? Like,
yeah.
you want to come over and like ride bikes or whatever. And that was an interesting time. That neighborhood is very quiet now. It used to be super just like it wasn't really like because again, the farther out you get from the city, the
Yeah.
more, like it becomes a little more, I don't know how you would put it, like dangerous in a sense, because there's like, there's more poverty as you go outside the city, as
Right.
is the case with most cities, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
But mine was like kind of a middle ground between it being very safe because it was again this like kind of like Italian working class neighborhood, and they kind of had these kind of cultural things they could govern themselves by,
Right,
but
right.
it was still a pretty wild place for sure.
Yeah, I feel like that's how I remembered certain neighborhoods because you know, when you look at certain neighborhoods like Crown Heights or you look at like I think even Flatbush, but like a
Mhm.
lot of these neighborhoods used to be originally just Italian neighborhoods. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
they were originally just Italian, mostly white people, but like um I'm not really quite sure at what point, but like I guess people just started migrating, just like how everything goes with like rent and costs and just things just change and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So like they started making
Yep.
their way to Bay Ridge, and then from Bay Ridge they would start making way to Jersey and like Staten Island or whatever. But
Yeah.
but but yeah, it's funny. And then going back to the whole mafia thing, that's what it was. It was just like it's funny because a lot of people have this whole like view of like, oh, mafia is like this organized crime thing. It's like
Yeah.
I don't know if a lot of people would remember, but back in the day, because with rules and laws,
Mhm.
doesn't really necessarily protect you, right? Like there's just certain things
Yeah.
that
No.
people figure ways out, and so that's why like the mafia, even the same thing with the yakuza, they all exist because they were just like, all right, well, we got this asshole over here like harassing this girl, and like
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like he's not like
Yes.
stopping, but like the cops like, oh, we can't do nothing because he's not
We
technically
can't do
doing it.
shit.
Yeah, he's not technically
Yes.
doing anything, but it's just like
Yeah.
you're gonna get there too late by the time she get killed or something, right? So like that's why like they
Yeah.
exist or whatever. But that's
They're like forms of community policing in a sense.
yeah, yeah,
Mafia. Yeah.
and that's that's actually an interesting point because I feel like that probably doesn't. That's probably less likely to happen. Well, there's a lot of factors that come into play now, but like I feel like
Mhm.
with like the internet age and all that stuff that we're doing now, it's just like I feel like more
Mhm.
people are just kind of actually in the matter of fact, yeah, I feel like people are more separate now because I feel like everybody's getting brainwashed by like political bullshit. You know what I'm
I
saying?
know, dude. Yes, I totally agree.
I'm not gonna even go to that direction of conversation because
Yeah.
I try to stay away from
Fair enough.
politics,
Fair
but
enough.
let's. I still want to know a little bit more about Chicago life. Like, what do you like? What was it like as far as like like what was the music you were listening to growing
Mhm,
up? Because like was it just straight hip hop? Because I feel like generally our time,
mhm.
more or less, we were
Yeah.
just like always listening to hip hop. But like,
Yes.
did you have like any specific artists before? Because I know like aside from like you had to like Kanye, Chief Keef, and all that, but like I'm sure there was like
Mhm.
some like old school legends back then. No.
Yeah, so there were a few. I wasn't super tapped into like the Chicago underground kind of hip hop. There was so much of that that
Yeah.
probably I missed.
Yeah.
But so growing up here is really again really interesting because you hear about all this like super big moments in like culture, but especially in like hip hop, you know.
Yeah.
But I think my really upbringing is more informed by like this kind of punk and like metal stuff that was
Interesting.
going on in the early 2000s
Right.
before I got into hip hop really. But I grew up in terms of like my trajectory as a musician specifically. You know, all your go-to kind of Midwest classics that were going on at the time, like Kanye, Nelly, Twista.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't get into like the kind of more old school, like the classics like Common and Do or Die and Crucial Conflict until
Right.
like later on and like exploring the history of it. So I really grew up very much like an MTV Fuse kind of kid and just kind of listening to what was charting at the time
Right.
until I got into punk, which is just a whole other subculture, which Chicago is also huge on too.
Really.
Yeah, yeah, it shit is crazy here. Here and New York both. Again, a very it's kind of like a cultural parallel
Yeah.
as well. But yeah, man, I grew up kind of listening to punk and then I there was like hip hop sprinkled in between there
Yeah.
somewhere. And then it didn't really change until I got into college to like a whole different thing. But
Okay.
yeah.
That's interesting because like, you know, I don't think of when I think of punk rock, I don't think of Chicago.
Yeah.
But then again, when I think about it as a whole, Chicago just was like a birthplace from a lot of music genres. Um,
Yeah. There's so much. Yeah.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like, so like how that I guess this is like kind of the thing that I actually want to know about because I never been to Chicago and I was
Mhm.
just curious and just how
Yeah.
is like the music, like the open-mindedness of the music, is it like I'm assuming that they're open to like all types of genres of music because I feel like Chicago being the birthplace of like house and like pretty much
Yeah.
all forms of like electronic music, like
Hmm.
because like if back in the day when I was growing up, right, like when
Hmm.
me and Ty were like out in this being young kids, like nobody
Yeah.
was listening to techno or like house, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
you get made fun
I
of
get
for
that.
that, you know what I'm saying? But like I feel
Yeah.
like back then because like that's kind of where it's from.
Uh-huh.
Was that like a thing or was like I'm not really quite sure about how that goes.
So from my understanding, because again, that didn't come into my purview until later
Right.
on in like kind of my musical arc or like my arc as like an artist, I guess. But um house was definitely like especially here, it had its like so what I understand is that it had this big moment where like it happened here. It
Mm-hmm.
went to Detroit and became techno,
Right.
and then this thing where like Detroit is kind of like right next to Chicago. You could drive there in like less than 7 hours, I think.
Right.
It's spread across the world, right? And then like as things tend to happen, as genres kind of move geographically, I think most pronouncedly it went to Europe and became like a million other subgenres,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Between
Yeah.
like hardcore and like acid house
Right.
and all this other stuff over time. Um, it became more underground here because it stopped being as like because like what we know as house just became in the early 2000s like these big trance tracks that
Yeah.
eventually became part of like pop music,
Right. Like a festival. Yeah.
right?
Like festival music and
Yeah,
all that
yeah,
type
it
of stuff.
became
Yeah.
super overproduced, like big, and developed this reputation for
Yeah.
being really like glamorous and like kind of like douchey for lack of a better word,
Yeah. Yeah.
but like house in its essence was still going, just no one was perceiving it from that, like, oh, like it came from this like kind of this interesting socio-political consciousness that
Right.
grew out of like certain aspects of like African American culture and stuff like that. Like no one was looking at it like that
Yeah.
until like 30 years later. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I feel like
Yeah.
because it yeah, no, around that time, the 2000s and like when it got like
Yeah.
to 2010, that's when
Yeah.
everything started becoming very mainstream. And then I think that's when it was just like, wait a second, like, can we just like also like point out that, where it came from type of thing. You know
Yeah,
what I
there's a
mean?
deep history.
Yeah,
Super
yeah.
deep history behind it.
And
So
then like yeah, and then yeah, it's funny because like around that around I would say like around 2013, 14,
mhm,
I was getting into the rave scene in New York, and then like
yeah,
that's when I started like discovering like I started meeting actual people from Chicago, like like
that's cool.
the footwork people and all that stuff.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah,
So cool as fuck,
so
dude.
I was just like,
Love that stuff.
yeah, so I was like, oh shit, like and then that's, I mean, and that I think around that time too, it was just like that's when you realize it's like a world of music, right? Because like I feel like
Yeah.
we get because I feel like our age group was like the making the music into like an industry like business model. So
Mhm.
like you said before, like the whole you were a product of like MTV Fuse, right? Like that's what we
Yeah.
were. Like I was the
Mhm.
same way. Like I was only watching MTV. You know what I mean? I didn't know like
Yeah.
that's like that's literally all I thought that was out there. You know what I'm saying? Like that
Yes.
was the only type of music. So I was just like, oh okay, this is cool. But then like
Uh-huh.
next thing you know, you fucking hearing like somebody making like fucking um some trap beats in fucking Spain. That sounds like crazy good.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And like
Yeah. Mhm.
and it'll be other shit too. Like, it'll just be like fucking guys just doing some crazy shit with percussions, and they'll be like fucking in like some, West bubble fuck, that you never country that
Yeah.
you never heard of. But they're like
Like,
doing it,
what?
yeah, but they're doing it like crazy. And
Yeah.
that's like I feel like that's a shout out to Bandcamp because I feel like Bandcamp so you find so many
Yes.
different countries in that place. It's just like what the fuck? Like
Yes.
people are really
You're like,
about this.
you're like, there is so much more music than you can
Yeah,
possibly imagine out there, like that you could ever touch in one lifetime, you know?
that's yeah, exactly, and I think that's definitely one of the main reasons why I like do DJing because I was just like, oh shit, this is like I gotta dig now, like I gotta really dig because like before I was
Yeah.
digging, I was digging before, like I used to go
Mhm.
to the mixtape spot.
Mhm.
And I used to get the mixtapes like with 50 Cent and all that stuff, and then just like all
Mm.
there was a lot of other rappers that I was really up on. So
Mhm.
I had the whole like obsession part down, but like
Uh-huh.
once I
Yeah.
figured out like oh shit, there's like the internet, like I got these sources like SoundCloud and Bandcamp. I'm like, oh, it's a rap now. I'm going all over the
Yeah.
place, and I'm just finding all this weird stuff. But
Yeah. I will say this, I was talking to my wife about this last night, but I was like, life, it's so easy to look at a musician or specifically a DJ, I'd say, and have this perception that they're like just up there like playing music. And
mm,
for the most part, because of the environment and the way the industry is built out, that can be
the
the
case,
fact,
yeah,
right? It's like you're just up there playing and you're like, I gotta make sure the crowd is good and I gotta make sure like, I'm just setting the vibe right because
yeah,
that's like part of the terms of your service or whatever. But then
right,
it's like behind that is this thing that just urges you to like listen to different kinds of music and
yeah,
you're just like obsessively always hunting for like this new thing to put your ear towards and like the drums are programmed differently or like these synths sound crazy on this song
yeah,
and like people see one thing but behind that is this deep fascination with like sound, right?
yeah.
It's not just even just like music, but even just the way you hear things is so it's such a different way of like living life. And I think a lot of people do not understand
Stand
that
that. Mm-hmm.
it's like a blessing and a curse,
Yeah.
I'd say.
No, I mean, that's something that I'm gonna definitely want to get into a little bit more. But like, real
Yeah.
quick, yeah, no, I mean, like,
Mhm.
this is a little bit different, but it's from the same point.
Mhm.
as a DJ, and I tell other DJs, like, don't even worry about what you're doing. If you make a mistake, half the time these motherfuckers don't even know what the fuck going on anyway. You know what I'm saying?
They,
Like,
nah,
they
they really
they
don't.
don't, but like, you know, at the end of the day, like, they're gonna appreciate throwing on a jam that they like. You know what I'm saying? But it's just like at the
Yes.
end of the day, like, you don't have to be so critical of what you're doing, or like, because like
Yeah.
they're not gonna notice you fucking like blending two
Yeah.
hi-hats like the wrong way. You know what I'm saying? Like they're
Yeah.
not
You're
really
like,
worried
oh,
of,
my
yeah.
my blend was off, or
Yeah.
this one's 124, and
Yeah,
this one's
yeah.
124.5. Like
But yeah,
yeah, it's so low stakes for the most part.
yeah,
You know.
and then like people are there to get drunk. They're not like sitting
Yeah.
there with their arms folded and just like,
Analyzing.
yeah. You know what I mean? I mean,
It's just
but
like,
that's the shit though. But that's the shit though, Chris.
yeah.
Me and you were there, we'd probably be doing that. We'd probably be doing that.
Yeah,
Like, I'm
you
just
would be
like,
like, "Oh, that mix was crazy.
yeah,
You
yeah.
put the low end really
But
wild." Like,
but I'm not that very pretentious DJ where like, oh, he made a mistake. Cause
thank God.
yeah, cause like, you know what's crazy, old school DJ from a New York dude, some Brooklyn cat, some
Mhm.
Spanish dude. He used to
Yeah,
DJ back in the day, like we're talking about like the 60s, 70s.
yeah.
And that's when, his time they were playing house and all that, because that's when that was like the first thing that was popping off at that time, right? So like, he told me the coolest thing he said, he's like, oh no, that's when you know that it's real, like that's when you know
Uh,
it's real. Like making mistakes is just part of the whole thing. And I was just like,
yeah.
obviously you don't want to make mistakes, but it's like,
Uh,
that's the authentic part of it. So I was just like, oh shit, that's weird.
mhm.
And after that I was just like, all right, not that I'm gonna be making
That's cool.
mistakes, but like it made me
No,
realize
yeah.
like, oh yeah, you gotta let go of that idea of things, so
It's kind of part of your process. No
yeah.
matter what media you're into, is like there will be parts where and maybe they're less. Maybe the good way of thinking about them are not mistakes. They're just part of your process. It's never gonna be completely
Yeah,
perfect.
no,
You know.
that's another deep conversation that we can get into as
Hmm.
well. But before we
Hmm.
get into that, I know that you're into production yourself, right?
Yeah.
So like, what do you mainly use? Are you just straight like off the like computer, or do you have like any
Um.
equipment that you use? Just
So currently, okay. So for a long time, all I used was my laptop.
yeah,
Just an Ableton setup. You know, I try. I'm not great at like music theory, so I do tend to rely on loops quite a
yeah,
bit. But I can program drums just fine. You
right,
know, I do. That's kind of like where I tend to get the most creative, is like different ways of programming drums. So I use Ableton for a lot of the releases of like the beat tapes that I've put out.
mm,
Um, but prior to that, I experimented with all kinds of different hardware. I had an MPC 2000 for a little bit, different kind of synthesizers. I had turntables for a little bit too.
nice,
Um, a lot of that stuff got packed up when I started to move around. I went to LA for a little bit after college, and as anyone at that time would do, sold a lot of this really cool gear that I regret selling, just to kind of like make sure I had money to get by, you
right,
know.
right,
And now that I have a better understanding of my workflow, I'm getting back into using like hardware, and trying to incorporate that in my process,
yeah.
you know.
I feel like the learning curve, like I don't know. I feel like touching hardware and like analog stuff is just
Mhm,
like you get the results what you want a lot faster
mhm.
versus like you're clicking and like turning knobs with a mouse and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, how did you like what kind of like got you into producing music in the first place? Like what was like kind of like your inspiration of like, oh, I want to make these kind of beats? Like what kind of music were you
Yeah.
trying to go for?
That that's a really interesting question, because I can't like maybe pinpoint a specific time.
Yeah.
I just knew I had an interest. It probably starts around my first couple years of college, where let's see, like uh, Space Ghost Perp was really big at that
Right.
time. As well as this kind of like Houston revival of like this chopped and screwed sound or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I used to take like stuff my friends would make and put it into like GarageBand and slow it down and be like, oh my god, it's chopped and screwed, right?
Nice.
But that was as far as it went for like about a year. I tried to tap in with friends that knew about production and be like, hey, can you like teach me? And
Right.
obviously that's such a big question to ask someone
Yeah.
that just like probably also doesn't really kind of know their way around the software as
Yeah.
much. And there wasn't all this like all these YouTube tutorials back then.
Not as much as
So
now.
I kind of
Yeah.
hung, yeah, no, no. I like hung it up for a while because I was like, well, this is just too hard to learn, and
Yeah.
I don't, it's just I'm in school for like something else right now. So that hung up until about the time I graduated, and then I got it. I was really into like, like dudes, like the trap sound, that early 2000s trap sound was still pretty big at the
Yeah.
time. That whole like Juicy J, Lex Luger, rubber band business thing was
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
really popping off. You know what I mean? That like Atlanta, Deep South trap sound was big.
Yeah.
So I went into it trying to like make beats like that using Ableton, which kind of go hand in hand for the most part, I would say.
Yeah.
It all kind of starts there for me.
Yeah. So like I think that was definitely a fun time when like Lex Luger
Yeah.
was coming out, and then he was just
Yeah, dude.
collabing with Jay-Z and then Kanye and all that
Uh,
type of stuff.
yes.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I feel like when because obviously with DJing, I kind of wanted to get into production myself, which I'm still planning
Uh,
to get into, but just
yeah.
my living situation is still kind of getting like figured out. But yeah, the learning curve on Ableton is horrible. Like, yo,
Yes, it is.
man.
It's not, dude. It's not very easy to figure out on your own. You
Yeah.
can't really, there's so much you can do with it, and that's part of the problem.
I
I
feel
feel like.
yeah, I feel like because it's such a blank canvas, like it has such a
Mhm.
wide range of things you can do. That's what makes it so difficult to like learn. Because once you learn it, like, man, you could do so much shit. Like
Yes.
I seen dudes just fucking zoom through that shit. I'm
Yeah.
like, what the fuck, like, bro, how long you been doing this? Because like I can't. There's like I'd be trying to like when I first started fucking with Ableton. Like now I kind of know how to navigate through Ableton a bit better now. But like before, I was just like, what the. Like I'll press something and then I'm like,
Yeah.
and then I'll press something and then something happens. I'm like, all right, let me try to erase this. Like I can't even
I'm
erase
trying to
this.
go
Yeah, like
backwards,
how
and
does
you
this?
can't.
Like yeah, it's crazy, man. And then like I'm just like, fuck this shit. I'm gonna go back to DJing, man. So,
Yeah.
but
Speaking of Lex Luger, for
yeah,
just one second before we
yeah, of
move on,
course.
I will pinpoint one moment actually that I know was really big for me, and that was again in the early days of YouTube when there's so much less content and like branding and stuff.
Yeah,
There's this video that came up, and it was like Lex Luger cooking a beat in his old like studio, which was just looked like an old bedroom
yeah,
that was repurposed at
yeah,
his parents' house or something. And it was him. It was a very low quality, low res video. I'll send it to you later because
yeah,
you've probably seen it. But he's like on Fruity Loops on his computer, and it's like your classic bedroom studio where like the fucking desk is so small and the monitors are like directly in your face, like
yeah,
right here. But he's cooking this beat, and all his friends are there, and they're all like passing a blunt around, and they're all
yeah.
like vibing to it. And I'm watching him cook this beat, and I'm like, bro, this is crazy. It's sounding crazy. And I'm
Like
like, wow, this is so
he's
inspiring,
just
right?
yeah, like he's using the bare minimum and like not the optimal environment, but still just
Yeah.
banging out these crazy ass pieces of art.
And it just sounded so crazy. And I was like, wow, I want to like but he the way, again, it's like the way you watch someone making art, you're like, wow, like I could do that. Like it
Yeah.
looks so simple. And then you go
Yeah.
into it, and you just like, wow, I don't even know what the fuck I
Probably-
signed up for.
yeah,
Bro.
like yo, it's frustrating. I think, but I think that's the whole process. I think the process,
Mhm.
part of that production
Yeah.
process, you just got to be frustrated because when you're creating something from scratch, especially when you have a certain vision. I noticed that with music production, you have this certain idea, but it's not gonna come out the way you want it to. Not at least in the
No.
beginning, you know what I'm saying? And then like,
Mhm.
so you have to like accept the fact that it's just you're not gonna be able to put your ideas out. You know what I mean? Till you get like
Yes.
really savvy with it, whatever. But
Mhm. I
um,
agree.
but are you working on any projects right now, as at the moment?
So currently I'm not actively working on anything with like a larger goal in mind.
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of like hip hop trap production the past couple years, and trying to enter this kind of like beat sellers market.
Okay.
I'm not in love with the way the ins and outs of that specific industry.
Yeah.
And also like my purview has kind of gravitated more towards like club and like house and again like techno and stuff like that. And
Really.
so I'm trying to kind of sonically transition to making more stuff like that.
That's
And
cool.
not necessarily as a reaction to how jaded I feel about selling beats, because I still want to also make hip hop and stuff like that as well, because I
Right.
very much love that sound.
Yeah.
But uh I also love club and techno, and I'm like, this would be cool to like explore. And I like the vibe. I mean, I'm sure I haven't been to many, clubs that were specifically geared towards hip hop. I've been to plenty of clubs that were specifically geared towards techno
Right.
and have always had a great time. There's always some kind of like a sense of community,
Mm.
and like there's so little like I don't know, there's so little like pretense from what I've experienced, that I'm just like, I like how free and like open-minded this whole like scene tends to feel for the most
Yeah,
part.
no, totally. It's crazy because like yesterday I was supporting my homegirl Tay Tay's party or whatever,
Hmm.
and like, yo, like I meet like these two old American girls, like three American girls at the party. So I'm like chopping it up
Hmm.
with them because like my Japanese ain't like super fluent or whatever. So I'm like chopping it up
Hmm.
with them, and of course
Yeah,
we end up going into like American politics and how much Americans like a
of
fucking
course. Yeah, yeah,
garbage burning fire, but
yeah.
but then like they were one of them was mentioning like, yeah, like she's like, oh my god, like it feels so nice in here, like I don't have to like be a certain way, like everybody's just chilling, and like you see all types of people in here, whether it's like, you know, yeah, it's just all types of people, like it's not even just on a ethnic base, like we're talking about
Mhm.
all types of people, right? And it's just like,
Yeah.
and nobody gives a shit, you know what I mean? Nobody's like worried about the
Yes.
next person, you know what I mean? So it's like,
Hmm.
when you said that, I was like, yeah, I know exactly what the feel you're saying,
Yes.
because I just feel like, people are just too worried about the next person in other scenes, and it just seems like, and
Yes.
they're very judgmental, and I just like, bro, like
I agree.
I'm over here just trying to drink and just listen and vibe to music. Like I'm not trying to
And
fuck it.
vibe.
Yeah, I'm not trying to
Yeah.
beef with anybody right now. Like get out of
Dude,
here.
yeah, that's the last thing I want. Like midnight at a club, and I've had a
Yeah,
few drinks in me. It's
yeah.
like,
It's like
just let me enjoy my
it's
time,
weird, and
bro.
it's and then there's
Uh,
there's it's that's actually kind of interesting too, how like certain like certain genres of music bring out certain types of people. You know what I mean? Like,
I know, dude. Dude, here's the thing too. It's like coming from punk and hardcore. It's like hardcore punk specifically has a very it is a very energetic music.
yo,
And so that invites a lot of like, like moshing and like
yeah,
physical
yeah,
contact during live performances, which, when the crowd is like mostly younger dudes, especially, just filled with testosterone and all these
right,
hormones and stuff are going on, and
right.
you're excited, and it's like there is a such thing as like pit beef, and like guys you see at shows that you have beef with because you're like at the show moshing, and like someone might have like accidentally punched you in the face, not
Probably,
purposely,
yeah,
you know what I mean? But it just happened, and you're like, oh, this guy's, you know what I mean, up in my shit or whatever.
yeah. So,
And it's like that can tend to be hostile. And 30 years later, I'm in this totally opposite thing where it's like people are just here to enjoy themselves,
yeah,
truly.
yeah. I mean, the punk scene. Yeah, no. I mean, I've definitely been in my
Uh,
small share of like that kind of like moshing stuff. I
mhm.
don't know how hardcore
Yeah,
moshing it can get, because I know it can get pretty
yeah,
nuts. But like I've been in those kinds,
yeah,
which is fun. I like getting wild and shit like that. But
yeah. I
nowadays I'm just like, nah, I'm just trying to chill. I'm trying to stay out of trouble. So,
yeah,
but
same, man.
damn man,
Yeah.
something was in my head, and I was trying to ask you something, but fuck. But yeah, going back to the production thing. So like, no, I totally
Yeah.
get what you were saying earlier, because I just feel like that's how I feel with DJing. Like at first I was
Mhm.
like, trying to DJ parties and trying to get like a lot of gigs, but like
Hmm.
you find something that you don't like about it and it doesn't really align with your goals as an artist. And for me it was like, oh, I gotta go do these shows where like I only could play dancehall or I only could play rap or you know what I mean, and just like
Yeah. Yep.
and
Yep.
it,
I know exactly
yeah,
what
so
you're
so
talking about.
so at this point I'm just like, oh bro, like I'm not even like, I didn't sign up for this, you know what I mean? Like I want to show people like
Hmm.
some weird shit and I want to see what if they vibe to it, I mean, obviously like
Hmm.
I'm gonna definitely be a DJ and try to like, see what people like and really test the waters, because like that's
Yes.
your job, right? Like you're just trying to figure out what the vibe of the room is. But like, nah, I mean,
Hmm.
what you I feel like with the whole belt beat selling thing, I could already tell like
Hmm.
people are very like asking you very specific things, I'm assuming, right? Like you're not allowed to do like, do you feel like you're constrained when you're trying to sell beats in that sense?
Not not necessarily. There's just it's like there's kind of two ways that the approach tends to go. It's either just someone that you it's mostly almost always just like my friends that are
Yeah.
just like, hey, can you send me some stuff that you might have?
Yeah.
And they'll comb through it and something will stick to them and they'll try to write to it and you have a song.
Yeah.
And then there that's most of the time, and very and like maybe just a handful of times I've done where someone was like, they'll show me a beat that sounds like something they want to do and
Yeah.
be like, hey, can you make something similar to this?
Mm.
Which is more along the lines of, can you make me something custom?
Yeah.
Which I've done a few times, but it isn't that is not always my favorite request because I'm just like, I have all this other stuff that probably sounds good. It's like, but you want to like, you want to sound
Settle
like
for
this top
this.
40 dude,
Yeah.
like, you know what I
And
mean?
it kind
Like,
of takes all the fun away, right? I'm assuming, because like,
yeah,
yeah,
it really does.
because it just now it becomes like a task. Like you're not even like trying to make something,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yeah. It's
um,
not it becomes less about the art of it and more like it's like a mechanical,
you know,
and that again, it's like that in terms of beat making on a computer can lean towards mechanical like 90% of the time when you have a workflow because you're just like, I have my way of doing things and I'm gonna like lay the synth out and then lay the bass out and then
right.
lay the hi-hat and the kick and the snare in this order specifically, and you've done it 300 times and you're just like, you're going in circles at that point, you know
Right.
what I mean? Yeah.
Oh, my bad. I was just, I just
It's
fucking
all
took
good.
a sip. Now, as far as so you were saying earlier too, like you're just trying to go towards more like techno and like dancey beats. How long
Mhm.
you been going in that direction for?
I've messed with it a little bit in the past. It's pretty new to me
Yeah.
again because like I've done so much up and down throughout like my career as an artist that I've experimented with things. I've stopped making music for a little bit. I've gotten back into it.
Yeah.
I've had points where I focus more on, like DJing versus production, or felt needs to take those like those really, I feel like they're really important to take, but like breaks from the creative process
Yeah.
because again it can begin to feel very mechanical. But it's entirely very recent, and I have a very kind of a fresh view of things. And so that's why I'm like, I just moved back to Chicago after like moving around for a couple years,
Yeah.
and I'm like back in, I'm like touching base with like a lot of people that I kind of grew up around. And when you move around so many times, it's like you lose touch with a lot of good friends over time,
Mm.
and they never stop being your friends, but it's like, oh my god, I haven't seen you in like 10 years kind of
Right.
thing.
Right.
And so I'm kind of establishing my roots again and like getting a feel for like what's around me, and I'm like, I feel like I have this great fresh start, and I'm like, I just want to do something new and like entirely different and just like re-explore possibilities.
Yeah,
So
I mean, no,
yeah.
I totally agree with that, and I think that's another thing that a lot of people fail to realize when it comes, especially music production. Like,
Mhm.
you know, you could always be practicing and doing stuff, but like when you talk about like
Yeah.
really making something that you want to make, I think
Mhm.
that comes into the whole like
Mhm.
you really have to like build up on a certain situation rather than just like forcing it out, because I just feel like, I mean, look at somebody like Kanye, right? Like Kanye doesn't just
Mhm.
drop an album anytime. He's not like DJ
Yeah.
Khaled, where DJ Khaled is just trying to pump out like these hits. You know what I mean? He's just
Yeah.
Kanye's like a real artist. Like he's a true artist.
Mhm. Mhm.
He has to go through a certain change or a certain period in his life that he has to reflect on, and then he reflects that by using music for his expression. So it's like,
Yeah.
you know, that's like you're at your arc, right? Like you're back in Chicago arc right now. So I just feel like, yeah, no,
Mhm.
I totally
Yes.
get that, you know. And like, again, you could always be practicing just to just keep your, you know, skills on tack, you know, like
Yep. Mhm.
up to par. But like as far as like the actual creation and like making something that you really want to create, yeah, that really
Mhm.
comes down to like where you at in life. Because that's another, I feel like that's why I moved out here, because I just feel like being in New York City, it's like, yeah, you could make money, and you know, there's a lot of good opportunities, but it's just like,
Mhm.
because of the way of the cost of living and how it's structured, it's just like you're just like busting your ass to like live in this small ass apartment, and or
Yes.
chances are you're gonna be with some like roommates, and like I'm not trying to do all that shit
Oh
anymore. Yeah,
boy,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I
I mean,
mean, that stuff's fun for a period of time, and then as you get older, you're like, I want like my peace, bro. I don't want to be dealing with
yeah,
like four roommates and like who's doing the dishes and you
dishes.
left your food in the fridge for 2 weeks type shit. Like,
Yeah, and it's just like, and it's crazy because like, you know, some people just they never done anything on their own, you know what I'm saying? Like, so
yeah,
it's just like,
dude. Yes.
like, yeah, this person seems nice, but this guy's you know, this person's useless, and like this, no, not
Yeah.
throwing out the garbage and shit. I'm like, nah, fuck that, bro, you
Yeah.
crazy? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Nah. No.
so like,
Can't do that anymore.
and then it's just like, as a creative, like that's like super,
uh,
you can't do like any little thing could disrupt you, I feel like, you know what I'm saying? Like
yes,
you
dude.
can't,
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
very hard to just sit down and just be like, all right, I'm gonna do this right now. Like I feel like, you
Yeah.
know, you could get caught up in tunnel vision so fast, you know what I mean? So like I just
Mhm.
feel like, you know, you moving back to Chicago makes sense, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could find up ways to make bread, or you know, have a day job, but at least have the space and have the peace of mind, like, all right, you know, now I could like
Mhm.
be in a place where like I have all my stuff together. I don't have to like, you know, because that's another thing. Like I feel like if when you're limited with space, you can't really have your setup the way you want to set up. You know what I mean? Like that's another thing.
No.
Yeah. So I just,
That's a fact, bro.
yeah. So like that's how I feel right now. I feel like my setup right now, it's good, but it's not where it's at. Like I want to get my like production controller here, but like I don't have space for
Mhm.
that right now. So like that's gonna be like
Mhm.
glass or whatever. But
Well, how and like side tangent, like
yeah.
how is the comparison between your environment in New York versus your environment in Japan, and how do you think that affects your creative process? I'm just curious.
Um, you know, I feel so like I'm in this whole mode of like, yeah, you know, making friends is cool, but I'm not really interested in
Mhm.
that. And I think
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get too deep into the whole like
Mhm.
being by myself, because I sometimes catch myself like, bro, you gotta go out and do something. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you can't just be like working
Don't
all the time.
yeah,
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like
self-isolating is
yeah,
bad for you,
and
bro.
it's funny
That shit
too.
is
Yo, you know it's funny too, cause like I'm sure you're up on like certain like things that happen in Japan, but like I started thinking about like, am I becoming one of those hermits? Like
Oh,
yeah,
true, yeah, I
it's like,
totally know what you're talking about, yeah.
so I'm like, am I
Next
being?
thing you know, yeah.
But go back to your question.
Mhm,
I think I think it, as far as like the DJ, like live, like the clubs,
mhm,
it's totally it's like the same but totally different. You know what I mean? Like
mhm.
one of the things I don't like about New York is that it became like LA Part Two, where like everybody's just cloud.
Oh,
Yeah, like, everybody's just about
mhm,
status. It's like your Instagram
yep,
and what you, oh, if you what you got, what you wearing. Like you don't got like high end fashion clothes on and stuff, and like
yeah, And measuring you, bro. You
Yeah,
know.
and then it's like, and it's crazy. As soon as I fucking touch down here, not
Mm,
even like 2 3 months, I link up with my homegirl Shui. She's some
mm,
Chinese girl that lives in Japan now, and she
mm,
introduced me to Tay Tay, the one that threw the party yesterday.
mm.
And I saw this girl Tay Tay. She's like a cute Asian girl. And she's like, she had like at the time she had Balenciaga. I don't know at that time it wasn't like that whole like scandal, but like
Sure.
she had
Oh yeah.
Balenciaga and all that, and she was just like all like
Mm,
dripped down. I'm like, oh, she's gonna be one of those
yeah.
types, you know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
like, yo, you know what's the crazy shit? At first I
Mm,
was like, oh shit, like she is kind of like uptight, but then I realized like
mm,
I noticed, you know what she was doing? I noticed that
mm,
she was talking to Shui, and then Shui was talking to
mm.
me, and then Shui shortly after was like, "Oh, she's shy. Like she couldn't even
I
talk
see.
to me. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I
Mhm.
was just laughing. I'm like, why are you so shy? I'm like, I'm like the
Yeah.
totally laid back dude. But like
Yeah.
I think that's just her and herself. But like I
Uh,
realized like she's super fucking humble. Like I remember
yeah.
the first gig that I did, I had like a good spot. Like it was like it was like third to closing, and I did my
Uh,
set. I had a good time. The vibes are good. And then there was another
mm,
homie from America that he closed out. I had left because like, you know, I had school, whatever, but like, and I was kind of like not really, um, really didn't like, I didn't want to stay out too long, and I just wanted to get back home. Like, I didn't really like know how to deal with that just yet. But
mm,
he had told me after I left, like when he did his set, she had stopped her set like 10 minutes earlier. She had like the main stage
mm.
just to see him play, just to make sure like, oh yeah,
Interesting.
you know what I'm saying? Like you don't see shit like that in New York, you know what I'm saying? You know what I
Nah, people are
mean?
like competing for that
Yeah,
spot,
you know what I'm saying?
competing for
So
10 minutes. Yeah.
and like granted she did throw that party so she could do whatever she want, but like she chose to do that. And like
That's cool.
and I hope that's the case for more people in Japan. Obviously
Mhm,
I can't say that that's everybody because I haven't experienced that. But from what I've
mhm.
been seeing and meeting, like people like are so like chill and it makes me more excited to like embark this because I've been
That's
wanting
really
to
cool.
yeah. And you know like this is the other thing and this is to answer your question again.
Mhm,
When I was back at New York, I was getting
mhm.
tired of doing shows for a lot of people because a lot of those shows were like, oh, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, which they have that how here in Japan too. But I just feel like in terms of the people themselves,
Mhm.
you know, I had so many people come to me like ask requests, you know, like. You know,
Mhm.
there's always gonna be like one person that's gonna ask a request. That's just like
Yeah,
that's
I
just how it
know.
is. And then like,
Yep.
but out here, I haven't heard one request yet. You know what I'm saying? And I had done like about like
That's
three,
cool.
4 shows so far, and it's just like
Yeah.
people are just trying to vibe. They're not trying to like tell you that it's not like
Yeah.
yeah, nobody's worried about that shit. You know what I mean? So like I just feel
Yeah.
like I'm excited for the whole like that's partly like why I'm like yeah I want to keep pushing because like now I'm in a
That's
total
cool,
different
man.
space. Yeah, yeah, you know.
Yeah. It's like refreshes your sense of what you do.
Yeah, cause like I just feel like now it's just like at the end of the day like now like and I also feel like I have an edge too because like I could now that I'm saying telling like, people see that me as a foreigner at the end of the day even though I'm Japanese by
Mhm.
blood like
Sure.
they
Mhm.
see me as a foreigner so like and not only a foreigner but a foreigner from New York you know what I'm saying so like
Yeah.
that's gonna always give me an extra edge um
Yeah.
and you know at the end of the day like you just gotta know what your advantages and privileges
That's
so like
cool.
I'm taking advantage of that so.
Do you think there's a perception that you're like more like worldly or cultured because you come from the
Oh
States?
yeah, totally. Cause I see that shit all the time back at home. When I'm in New
Interesting.
York, like
Yeah,
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 you see people like, oh
yeah.
yeah, that person's from California, or that person's from Paris. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, of
like,
course, yeah.
it's easy to get wowed by people like that because like
Uh-huh.
you feel like there's some kind of special, but then you realize like people are just people are just
Yeah.
wowed by the idea of them coming from somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? And
I
I
think
know,
yeah, true.
yeah, I noticed that's a thing. You know what I mean? I noticed that's just a thing. So I was just like, so
Mhm.
obviously I'm gonna take advantage of that myself.
Yeah. Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah. But
Like, let me tell you about the magical place I
yeah,
come from, New York.
New York. Yeah, I'm from New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, every time I say that, they're like, "Oh, really?" They'll say like, "Yeah," you know what I mean, like in Japan and Japanese, or like, or if
Yeah.
they're English, they'll be like, "Oh, wow, you're from New York." Like, yeah, you know, I'm from New York. You know
Mhm.
what I mean?
That's
But
crazy,
yeah,
bro.
but I'm
That's
not.
cool.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be. I try not to be like too douchey about it. But
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah. So like But have you been hitting up parties back in Chicago? Like, have you been checking out the scene? Cause I've been always wanted to go to Chicago just for the fucking clubs, the party scene. I want to know how
Yeah.
that's like.
So it's interesting because for a while, especially when I was getting into more of the underground house and techno club stuff, around 2016, 2015, there weren't a lot of spaces that played a lot of great electronic music. There's one club here called Smart Bar that's
Okay.
like kind of famous and has a really long history in the city. Um, and that was kind of just like my go-to spot for a while because you would see all of like the DJs. Like DJs will tour across the world and make a point to hit Smart Bar
Right.
because of its
Right.
like lineage, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And it's one of those places where, it's like I don't know, like if like a spot in the UK would be like Fabric or something
Right. Right.
like
Right.
that. Probably, right? You know what I mean? That's like, oh my god, I like made it because I played Smart Bar kind of thing. But
Okay.
for a while there wasn't many places like that. And then again, now years later, there are more clubs and bars than the city has ever seen or have known what to do with.
Right.
So I'm trying to explore what's around. There's obviously more accessible, like underground spaces that I tend to prefer,
Yeah.
but club wise, I actually work at like one of the more popular clubs
Oh,
in
nice.
Chicago on the west side. Yeah, it's called Blind Barber. It's a speakeasy.
Okay.
It's like a barber shop in the front in the daytime, and at night it's like
That's
a
cool.
bar and a club in the back. And we have regular programming there. And so yeah, like I'm kind of tapped in just through being part of that specific place because we book a lot of like really like they're like big locals, like they
Yeah.
play at every single big bar and club out here,
Right. Right.
so that's kind of where I'm starting small, you know what
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, but then
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like trying to just see everything by the end of the year kind of thing,
Yeah, man. Hell yeah. No, I totally dig that.
yeah,
And I love venues like that where it's just like there's just a
yeah,
different kind of like approach to it. Cause like
yes,
that's so sustainable too, right? Like just having a barber
hmm,
shop, but like all right, when it's done, like you could just throw a little party in the back or whatever, you know what I mean?
yeah,
But and like working in that environment, like how do you
uh,
like how all right, so this is what I know this is a little bit weird question, but like
no,
do you work specifically doing that, or do you like juggle a couple other like a day job and do that at the same time? Because
um wait, I think I cut you off just now.
oh yeah, yeah. Do you work like a day job with the nightlife job, or do you just do the nightlife job and just kind of like do other things? Like, just out of curiosity.
So I actually work there in the daytime as like a shopkeep,
Mm.
but I am in charge of like I maintain their DJ booth.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm kind of in charge of the sound equipment and I help with social media, which I do basically all that during the daytime. I'm
Ah,
actually
okay.
rarely there at night,
I see. All right,
unless
all right.
I'm out for the evening, but I take care of the booth after the weekend. So like
Yeah.
after, there's like liquor all over the counter and like you have sticky knobs on the mixer and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I go clean it up, I run a sound check, I make sure everything is like working
Working.
okay so
Yeah.
that by the time the week resets, everything is like
Good to
in
go.
good shape and
Okay.
there's nothing wrong with it. So I am really there in the daytime, but we only go out there for recreation
Right, right.
at night, yeah.
Well, that's because that's what I'm worried about. Cause like I'm like I want
Mhm.
so obviously there's I'm gonna work a day job, but like how am I gonna be able to like DJ the weekend and then like do this at the same time? Like that's my
That's
that's why I
yeah.
asked, because
That's
I'm
a
just
tough
like,
balance,
yeah, because
bro.
like I I'm just like to me it's just like, yeah, I want to
Mhm,
DJ, and having the
mhm,
extra like bread, it's nice.
mhm,
So like
mhm,
ideally I would like to work like a daytime job, maybe
mhm.
4 days, and then like do a couple of days of DJing. That would be
Right.
super like great. But like then I also think
Yeah.
about like, okay, well, I'm not young like before, and I like
Yeah.
and I also like training. So like, is this gonna be like all fitting in my schedule? So I was just wondering if that's
Yeah.
what you were doing, and I was like, maybe you had some tips. but
Well,
but
no, no, no. I will
yeah,
say this to
yeah,
speak to that is they are also playing with the idea of giving me some spots throughout the month
right,
to DJ
right,
because I'm tight with the folks who work there
yeah,
and they like my taste in music and I'm like, yeah, I can do this, I can do that. I have, this like toolkit of different expertise, you know what I
right,
mean? And I was like, if I can get a spot once or twice a month, I'd be so down to do that. And
yeah.
so I'm like, I'm excited about that, but in the back of my head, I'm like, damn, like if I DJ Tuesday night and they ask me to work Wednesday morning, I mean, that might be a problem,
Yeah,
obviously,
like
right?
you're gonna feel like shit, you know what I mean?
You're gonna feel like shit. You're not gonna be on top of your game. You're gonna start getting stressed out. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? And so my main thing, and I guess maybe just because they're particularly like accommodating and not super strict on like what they require of me,
yeah,
and I'm like, whichever I enjoy more, they're like, you can just kind of organically kind of grow in the direction you want. So they're like, if you want to do more of this stuff on the back end, like we can talk about that in the future,
yeah,
or like if you just like working here in the daytime, we can also just kind of make that your mainstay. So
yeah,
I'm just like, I'm kind of going just kind of where it takes me
yeah, yeah,
for the time being. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's at this point as an adult, I'm just
Mm,
like, yeah, I don't know about like being the whole DJ thing and just trying to make money, because I want to make money too, and like I already know at this
mm.
point being a DJ is not good money. You know what I'm saying?
Does
Like,
not make great money
yeah,
and
like
you're up late.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like yo, look, at the end of the day, like there are people that made like they actually have like that's like their whole sustainable like job. Like
Hmm.
they're actually living off of that. But like
Hmm.
that takes a lot of like work and dedication, and like that also to
It
me
does.
like also like what are you like, you have to have also like a 5 year 5 to 10 year game plan, because like what are you gonna do, you're gonna be doing
Yes.
that all the way through your 40s to like just,
Oh
yeah,
man,
there's like
dude.
you have to have like some kind of like game plan where like
Yeah.
you're doing something else with music, you know what I'm saying? So like
Yeah.
um for me, like that's not where I'm trying to go. Like I'm not trying to be like like if I am gonna do touring and stuff like that, like I'll just do it at one part of like the year. But like I'm not trying to be
Yes.
like one of those people where like I'm doing it 24/7. I mean, if that's where like life takes me, then I'll dedicate to that. But like
Mhm.
that has to that but you that to be at that level, like you got to be in production, you got to be really successful, you got to have like a lot of good connections and stuff like
Yes.
that. So like
Uh-huh.
it's like it's that scaling, right? Like
Uh,
if you're not making it, you're making like chump change, right? But versus if you
yes.
are making it, you're set for life pretty much. But
You're set for life, but you're also just like in this like machine that's like the music industry. You know
oh
what I'm
yeah,
saying? And
and
they're
then
just like, yeah.
and that's another thing too. Like I'm a fitness guy, so like I can't just be fucking traveling 2 3 weeks with bad
Oh
sleep.
man, I bet,
Yeah,
dude.
you know what I
Bad
mean?
sleep,
Like
bad diet,
yeah,
even.
yeah. Oh, and that's what's gonna happen because you're like stressed out, so you're gonna stress eat. And I stress eat. I'm very susceptible to that shit. Like I get like a hard day's work, I'm eating the most junkiest like food I can find. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Like, yeah. It becomes French fries like
Yeah,
fucking 5 times a week, bro.
yeah.
Like,
So it's
yeah.
just like with that kind of lifestyle, yeah, I'm gonna stress eat a lot, and I'm just like, nah, I ain't
Mhm,
trying to be that. Like
mhm.
that's not where I want to be at.
Yeah.
But yeah, damn man, and it sucks because like talking about this whole music stuff and like just kind of
Mhm,
like kind of just like politicking about that, like I
mhm.
would it makes me like, damn, I wish I could collab with you somehow, because like I feel like, damn,
Yeah.
I feel like we could throw like a dope ass party, because like,
That would be crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
because like right now that's where I'm at right now.
Um,
I linked up with this dude,
mhm,
Terrence. He's just like some black DJ or whatever out here.
mhm,
It's funny too, because like I asked him yesterday. I'm like, why did you choose like America? I mean, like Japan out of all places, because I think he was like originally like in the
mhm,
military. That's how he ended up in Japan or whatever. But
mhm,
like now he just lives here and stuff, and then like, um, but yeah, I think he just understands being, African American in America versus being African American in Japan, and I think he just chooses
mhm.
to be African American in Japan. But
That's cool.
he but yeah, obviously we vibe pretty well, and we're talking about doing some parties on my own, because like that's where I'm more interested in. Like I'm not really interested to like I have no, I love playing for anybody. Like I'm not like, oh, I don't, I'm like, I'm not pretentious where I'm like, oh, I'm not playing for nobody. But like
Uh-huh.
it's, once you start getting the hang of like throwing parties and like getting um like just knowing that whole like how to do that, that
Mhm.
becomes more fun, because I just feel like um as long as you have a good team,
Yeah.
from making the visual, like the
Yeah.
posters and all that,
I get
getting
that.
the
Yeah.
people
You're
together.
you're you're really good at that, by the way. Your AV-SPEX thing, I've
Oh
always been
yeah,
really
man,
big fan.
thank
It's
you,
really cool.
man.
Yeah.
It's definitely taking the turn. It took a really big turn, because a lot of the main guys are like gone now, but like
Mhm,
um but this is why I'm doing what we're doing right now, because
mhm.
I feel like um I see that it's better as a media group, so I'm gonna keep going for that. But
Mhm.
but now that I'm here, so like before I came to Japan and before COVID happened, I was actually throwing parties and stuff.
Mhm.
But when COVID had hit, we just kind of gave up that whole idea. So like we're like,
Mhm. Oh, yeah. Yep.
but yo, no, I like, going back to what you were saying, like I hope you do get into like party like event, or like just creating functions, because I feel like
For sure.
it's really fun. Like it's stressful,
Yeah.
but like once you understand
Mhm.
like what you got to do, and like
Yeah.
and you have this like professional approach to it, it's so much fun. And like, you
Yeah.
know you just got to make sure like with whoever you putting on when they play music, just make sure they're bringing people, because like don't
For
like, yeah,
sure.
I mean, like just make sure they're capable of bringing people, that they're cool and stuff like that, because like
Yeah.
I don't know how much you've been in shows, but man, I've been hired at some gigs, and like
Yeah.
motherfuckers do not
Trust me, bro.
motherfuckers do
Yeah.
not promote. Yeah, I seen,
I
and
know it.
it's not even my event. I just pay
Yeah.
attention, because I'm just like, bro, like, and then like, and you expect to get paid? Like, come on, bro. Like, you're not even
Mhm.
trying, man. Like,
The
yeah.
f the funny thing is, a lot of people, I've heard a lot of musicians talk to like being passionate about their craft, saying things like, I'll play to an empty room. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'll play to a crowd of one person.
Yo.
But my experience is, realistically, there is nothing more deflating than being a DJ or being a musician, going on stage with all this excitement and playing to a
Well,
mostly empty room. It's
well,
actually very, it does something to your spirit where you're like, wow, I'm not having a great time
yeah.
right now.
It's,
Like, you know
yeah,
what I'm
no, yeah,
saying?
no. It is, especially when you start out, it's very, very awkward. I remember one
Yeah,
time,
it's super awkward.
yeah, so like I remember one time a while ago, I threw a party with like these other people, and my homegirl opened, and I'm on my way to the party, to the gig, and then she's like
Mhm.
calling me. I'm like, all right, what's up? And she's like, oh, so what's going on? I'm like, I'm on my way. And she's just like, oh, well, why, when you gonna get here? I'm just like, oh no, just start playing. And then like, I guess she didn't understand, like, just because there's nobody there, you have to start playing, because that's the set time. You know what I'm saying? So she kind of like
Yes.
freaked
Yeah,
out a
yeah.
little bit, because she
Mhm.
didn't know how to react to that, and it only clicked to me afterwards, because I had already, because I've been doing this for a while, so like all that type
Yeah.
of stuff, like I know that's part of the game. But I feel like I realized after, like, oh, this is the first time for her, so she was like freaking out, like, what am I supposed to do? I'm like, no, you just gotta play. That's it. Like, it sucks. It sucks. I know, but like that's just how it goes. Like, you just gotta don't worry about it. Don't look. I just, you know what it is. I've been in those positions plenty of times. I've been in those positions where like there's barely anybody there. Nobody's like really vibing because like it's not enough people, right? Because like when it's even worse. It's not even like, aside from it just being awkward because it's like not that many people, but like it's also worse because even if there's some people there, it's hard for people to vibe because it's not enough people, right? Like the more the people, the more people, more like the freedom of like, all right, let's go like get our dance on, you know what I mean? Like our groove
get
on.
a little crazy.
Yeah, but like now when it's like 2-3 people, it's like the high school dance and everybody's being like wallflowers and shit, and just like
wallflower. There's 2 people that are just there to support you dancing. And being like, okay.
Yeah. But I think especially with like creating functions and gathering, I think the biggest metric is just being you gotta just be really cool in the sense of like, you gotta just be very welcoming with people that you deal with, and like, because I feel like the whole getting people together is such a beautiful thing, and like I find myself doing that a lot lately nowadays. So like I just feel like now that I want to get back into event throwing and I want to get into that whole thing, but like I hope that you as a artist and a producer and slash DJ, I hope to see that coming from you as well. I think you have that kind of like really chill vibe. Like every time we spoke and stuff like that, like it's funny too because like I don't even remember how we really met. You know what I'm saying? Like I know that we met through online mostly because of my brother. But like I don't even think about how we met. I just always remember like you're always a cool dude. So that's why I always like talk. I
really appreciate that.
No, and
likewise, it's mutual.
Yeah.
For real.
And I feel like, but like going back to the whole like gathering people and making functions, I think that's a really important metric. I think it's being able to build rapport is like super important, and I think that you have that. So like I feel like if you are gonna go that way, I think you'll do fine. I think you could be able to pull that off, not a problem.
I would love to be able to like explore that too, beyond just like wanting to perform and like make art as an individual. I think that there is something especially now so important about like community building. Again, like it's so lost in the kind of individualistic mindset that social media sets us up for. But that makes it even more important now because I'm like, this is kind of like, you can listen to music by yourself at home, but there is no feeling like when it's like 11:30 and you're on a crowded dance floor and you've had a couple of drinks and like a DJ's playing this song that you've never heard before, but it sounds so good and everyone's dancing and you're with your friends, and it's just like that's like one of the most blissful experiences.
Totally. And and like it's crazy. It's funny because I've been doing these podcasts for a while now, and the last 2 guys that I've been speaking to, one is a leather crafter and the other one's a tech guy. Both of them talk about building community is important. The tech guy was like, in order for you to get good at tech and really move up in the ranks of like in the tech industry, you have to have community. You have to hit up people randomly that are in the industry. I mean, not saying that's something that we should do, but but like the tech industry specifically, a lot of those guys that are like senior level, they know they are usually humble for the most part because they already made it. They're not worried about being competitive because they already made it. So when there are people that approach them asking questions, they're surprisingly open to tell you, oh, this is how I did it, or like this is what I would do in your situation. But that's aside from the point. The point is that they very put the emphasis on community, and I feel like us as producers slash DJs, we get caught up in the whole music aspect or the creation aspect so much that we forget the. This is kind of more like the business. It kind of falls a line in the business part, but it's also part of the process. I also believe because like, you know, it's funny because like there's a really short anime. You should watch it if you ever get a chance. It's I'll send it to you. But the name is like DJ Agetaru, and like basically it's just this young kid that's like discovering DJ and like
Very
yeah
cool.
yeah so he meets with like this old head DJ, and then this old head DJ says one thing which stuck to me. He was like, if you don't bring anybody to the party, like, then there's no point in doing this. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what basically he was saying. And I was just like, holy shit. I was like, you know what? And you know what's crazy? Ever since I saw that and heard that, I was like, damn, I got to really make sure I bring people. Like, and it's true, right? Like, you can't just be like thinking like, oh, I'm going to just play music and that's it. No, like, you got to be like getting people excited of what you're doing. And you got to get them like, yo, I'm doing this. Like, come through, you're gonna have a good time, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, no, I hope that now that you're back in Chicago, like that's part of the goal, because I think for both of us, I think that's really important. I think that's where it gives me the motivation again, because like I enjoy DJing, but like now that I don't care about playing for shows for people because it becomes like a request thing, or like people want a certain thing, I'm more about throwing events, because when you throw events, then you just start building the community that from there. So like, yeah, I think that's a really good point that, I definitely hope to see that you do something with that, because I think Chicago's a really great place for that as well. I think it's just
For
like,
sure.
yeah, I feel like it's like almost like, yeah, I feel like it should be one of the better places in America to like, really put some people on the forefront, especially because like people are coming through there, as like big time DJs are coming through there all the time and stuff like that. So
Yep. Mhm. The thing with, and this just going back to your first question, Chicago, I would say, is almost like New York, but if you just spread it out, you know what I mean? And
Okay.
put it on a chessboard. It's literally, if you look at a map of Chicago,
Yeah.
it's like a grid. Literally, just like blocks are all perfect squares
Yeah.
next to each other. And yeah, it's interesting to see kind of how kind of those similarities align between yours and mine experience in two different cities. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
have totally different geographies and their own cultures, but like it's like from what I have gotten to know about you, like our trajectory, there are a lot of similarities there, and it's just really cool to see. You know what I mean? And I would love to tap in with you for like, just to keep our conversation ongoing about like how to do things in terms of not just like production or DJing, but like having events, doing them the right way.
Oh
And even
yeah.
just like,
Oh yeah. I
you know
mean,
what I mean?
if I'm not like a super expert, but like I could say like,
Mhm.
but at this point
Yeah.
I know from being the DJ side, because from the DJ side you got to know like, you got to know how the equipment works and all that stuff, and like you got to make sure like sound check and all that stuff. So like as far as like
Mhm.
going to the club and then like talking with the staff, like that's obviously something that I'm already know what to do there, like how to handle myself. But then like
Mhm.
now that I had done parties and I've been working, I've been getting more towards of like organizing the whole thing. So like, yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, you know what I mean? And I also
I
have like,
appreciate it.
yeah, and then I think one of the more important things is just make sure like, what if it's not you, it's somebody that's being able to do the visual aspect of it, like just the posters
Mm.
and stuff like that, because
Very important.
yeah, because like like you can't, it's like an album cover, you can't have a whack album cover and then like because like yo
Yeah.
I seen some people, like I don't know who they went to, but like
Uh-huh.
it's just too much of a mess. Like
Yeah, for sure. Dude, yes. I know exactly what you're talking
I've been
about.
I've been
Too.
I've been around designers, and like these guys like graduated from like the best graphic design
Yeah.
school. So like they rubbed off on me. So like when I see like design um fundamental mistakes. I'm just like, oh my god, you can't do that like that. Like it
Yeah,
doesn't make
you're like,
sense. Yeah.
yeah, you're
So
like
like,
there's no negative space. All
yeah,
you have is stuff on in your design. It's like
but. I,
cluttered and like annoying.
But I will say though, yeah, it
Um,
definitely is important to work with somebody, whether it's a friend or somebody that you know is a professional, to help with the branding, because it is a brand. You know what I mean?
mhm,
Your party is not just a party. It's a like a brand, right? Because like the thing is,
yep.
we were talking about how it's a community. So like if you're building a community, this comes down to like user personas or buyers personas, and you're creating a person. You're
Mhm,
essentially creating a person like who I want to come to these parties. Like,
yeah.
are they like me, or are they like this? Like whatever it is, you know what I mean? Whether you're doing punk shows, obviously it's punk
Mhm,
people that are into punk, or if you're doing electronic shows,
mhm.
like, oh, okay, I want kind of like hip people, but also like kind of ravers. You know what I mean? So like
Yes, for sure.
so from that aspect and knowing that, that's where you build your brand around, and like you have to, that's a
Mhm,
very big part of it, I feel like, because once you start, you know, people throw parties all the time, and in order for them to really know about you, you have to like really just stand out. So like I definitely recommend, if you could hook up with somebody that can do that, that's willing to work
mhm,
with you, that helps out a lot. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's I didn't expect this conversation to talk about event throwing, but I find it very
mhm,
exciting, and it actually gives me more motivation to get it done now in Japan, because
mhm.
like that's another thing, man. You gotta come visit, man. You gotta come visit,
Yes, for
yo.
sure.
Have you ever been to
We
Japan?
really want to. I've never been. I've only been to Tokyo and Narita for layovers going to
Okay.
Thailand. I
Okay.
have some family over there, but yeah,
You
I
got
haven't been.
family?
I've always wanted to, but yeah.
You got family in Thailand?
Yes. So,
Cause
some extended family.
your background's Vietnamese, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So the to put it kind of in a digestible summary, my my dad's side of the family is Chinese,
Okay.
but a long time ago they migrated throughout the southeast portion of Asia into Laos.
Okay.
And Laos is next to Thailand. Lao and Thai cultures are nearly identical. The language is also nearly identical.
Oh, okay, okay.
And so during the Vietnam War, Laos was getting carpet bombed like crazy, which
Right.
is a whole other part of history that a lot of people don't
Don't
know
talk.
about.
Yeah.
But during that time, they migrated to Thailand and were sponsored by distant relatives. And so we have a lot of kind of like distant family there. And then my step family, like my dad's wife, also is from Thailand. They own like a noodle manufacturing company out there, and
What?
yeah. So I've been out there to visit them. It's
Yeah.
really cool. The culture is very about hospitality and being very welcoming and
Yeah.
polite, and yeah, it's super fun. But my mom's side of the family is the Vietnamese side,
Okay.
so that's kind of where, yeah, that's
Where
where
it
the
comes,
intersection
yeah.
is.
No, cause yeah, cause when you know when I met you, I knew that
Mhm,
briefly about you. But when you
mhm.
said Thailand, I'm like, Thailand. I was like,
Yeah,
how did?
it sounds random,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, it was just like
there is a
migration.
small
Yeah,
historical reason.
that makes
Yeah.
sense. But yeah, no,
Uh,
I'm supposed to be going to Thailand in November. One of my boys
oh, very cool,
yeah,
man.
one of my boys bachelor things going on over there, so it's gonna be a wild time.
Oh, that's gonna be a good time,
Yeah,
dude. Yeah, that's gonna be a great
these
time.
guys are fucking wild, bro. I'm not gonna even.
Yeah.
Yeah, these guys are just crazy. So like,
When are you going?
no, November, like late November.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's great too, because the humidity will die down a little bit, and the weather will be some of the best you've experienced in your
yeah.
life, bro. It's like
That's
breezy and kind of warm. Yeah.
yeah. That's what I've been told. Cause like one of
Uh,
my classmates, she's not here anymore, but she was, you know,
mm,
obviously learning Japanese. She's from Thai. And I
uh,
hit her up. I was like, "Hey, I'm coming down. Just let me know like what's up." And
cool.
she's like, "Oh, November's probably the best time to come." So I was like, "Oh yeah, let's do it." So I'm looking
Yes,
forward to that.
it truly is. Yeah.
But
I'll send you some of my recommendations
oh yeah,
for
totally. I mean,
yeah.
oh shit, you probably would know anything. You probably would know a lot because you've been there enough
Yeah.
times. So
Uh,
um, but yeah, you got to come to Japan. Obviously, like I'm still kind of like setting my roots, but like
mhm. Yeah.
um take your time, because I feel like the more
Yeah.
time you take, it's like
Mm.
it allows me to just get better knowing Japan, the ins and
Of
outs and
course.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I feel like next year I'm gonna try to get back into like traveling because I gotta go back to New York. I'm trying to go back to New York like once a year and like
How long has it been since you've been back?
I left November 2020, was it? I think 2022. Yeah, November 2022.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, so
So a little less than a year.
yeah,
So you're still pretty new out there,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's pretty new. Was it 22? Yeah, I believe it was.
Mhm.
Or no, it was November 21.
Okay. Oh, so yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
you've been out there for a minute, but I'm sure it's like the cultural shift is
yeah,
still.
yeah, yeah. It was November. Yeah, that was November 21. It felt like 22 because it just turned into the new year. It was such late. It was
Yeah,
so late in the year. Yeah, yeah. That was crazy. And
flies by, man.
yeah, it flies by, man. And but yeah, it's still surreal being here. Like I feel like I'm not even like I'm like I still it doesn't sit in like that I'm living here and I'm planning to live here forever. But yeah, man, you gotta come out.
Yeah.
I'll have something.
Likewise for you, man. If you're ever in Chicago, you know what I mean? If you
Oh
ever want to try and come
shit,
back to the States,
I
you can
got
make a trip out here for the weekend or something,
yeah,
man, you
yeah, I
know?
got
Like,
to. I feel like I have
yeah.
to, especially because like I'm
Mhm.
such a house person, so like I just feel like I have to see the mecca of like house music. You know
Yes,
what I
dude.
mean? Like,
Yes, for sure.
yeah,
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 like
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
It's a must.
That's gotta be a thing for me. So,
Uh,
but yeah. Uh, so we're running up to a good time right now. We're
mhm.
gonna just wrap it up here. But is there anything
Yeah.
you wanna touch base on?
No, not necessarily.
Is there
This was
anything that you want to like announce that you've been working on or anything like that? Or
yes. So I have a release of like some beats that I dropped. It's my Energy Tapes series that
okay,
I released under Dirty Money Beats. That's the beat making monitor
okay,
moniker that I have, and that's on all the streaming platforms. It's a collection of stuff I've made in the past
nice.
2 or 3 years. Very inspired by that like New York UK drill sound.
Okay,
Which I was like really heavy on for a while. But um, other than that, there's not a whole lot going on. I have a DJ gig coming up on the 29th, which I'm really excited about
nice.
at Blind Barber where I work.
Right.
So that should be pretty fun. Other than that, man, I'm building a website. I'm uploading all this like photography that I have built up over the past 10 years,
Right.
and I'm trying to make it like a landing page for all of my creative pursuits so
There you
people
go.
can get a sense of like the magnitude of like everything I've kind of like accumulated, and
Right.
really something just for myself to be proud of, because
Yeah.
I have learned that I don't tend to play it up.
Right.
So I'm trying to just be more like owning my identity as an artist and just being like,
Super
this is who I
important.
am,
Yeah.
and I need y'all to see that.
Yeah.
But other than that, man, yeah, my stuff is on streaming, accessible to everyone who has Apple Music,
Okay.
Spotify,
I'll drop the
even
links.
YouTube. Yeah,
Yeah.
bro.
Yeah.
So there's that. Other than that, man, just living life. Taking it a day at a time.
There you go, man. All right, man. We'll wrap it up here, man. Chris,
Cool.
thank you for so much. I enjoyed. It was such a good time catching up. I appreciate you coming through, man.
Same, man. Thank you for having me, bro. I
Yeah,
appreciate you.
yeah. We'll definitely link up again. We'll touch base and see what part two is and everything. So
Yeah,
we'll chop it up.
I would love that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. We'll chop it up. All right, brother. I'll talk to
Cool.
you soon, man.
Keep me in the loop, bro.
Yeah.
Peace, man.
Peace,
Thank you
man.
again.
Take care.